Greetings from Serenity with Dr. Reverend Pamela June Banks Anderson. We are taping on location at St. Stephen's Community Church, United Church of Christ, and we want to start this program out by sharing that we will be expressing to you and hoping for you an awesome Thanksgiving and Thanks-living. However, before doing so, we want to make it known to you that the primary purpose, the primary mission of Serenity is to share with you information and inspiration. If we are to have peace on earth and goodwill to all, we must first find peace within and goodwill within. Please join me in reciting the prayer for which our time together is named. God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Good evening and welcome to Serenity with Dr. Reverend Pamela June Anderson. The primary mission of Serenity is to share with you information and inspiration. If we are to have peace on earth and goodwill toward all, it must first begin with individuals having peace within and goodwill toward all within. Please join me in reciting the prayer for which this television show is named. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This evening we are taping on location at St. Stephen's Community Church, and we are having a discussion on immigration, an interfaith issue. I'm going to ask that our guests here, who are here to share information and action items about immigration policies, how they affect people in Michigan, and what the faith community can do to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you have come from, and why this is such an important issue to you. Please, I'll start with you, if you'll take the mic.
Okay, my name is Max Angiano, Maximo, whatever you want to, whichever way you want to say it. We started about probably 6 years ago. I got elected to a position at Crystal Lake Church because of the need. There were so many of our church has got a lot of undocumented immigrants at our church, and so I got elected to a position called a coordinator for Civil Rights for Immigrants Task Force. And then immediately there was a bunch of people started calling me and started calling our group, and we started going to jail. We started going to jails. We started helping them out everywhere we could. So from there we progressed. We went to Washington. We were part of the 400,000 that were at the National Mall in March of 2010. And anything we can get involved with, locally or individually, we try to help out. Whoever we can.
You will probably be the first presenter tonight. And the way this is going to go, ladies and gentlemen, is the person will make a presentation and then there will be time for questions and answers. And then the next person makes the presentation, time for questions and answers, and so on down the line. So if the person next to you would also introduce yourself, how you got involved with this, and why is it important?
My name is Judy Olson, and I'm from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lansing and the Ingham Immigration Coalition. Immigration as a moral issue is a 4-year congregational study action issue in our denomination. I was at the convention where it was adopted, and at that time I had read some of the background material, a small amount, and went to some of the sessions to prepare to vote, and I realized that I really needed to learn something.
Outstanding.
My name's Reverend Tom Jones. I'm from First Congregational Church in Charlotte. My wife and I had gone down to San Diego to what the UCC calls an immersion experience, where we could see the wall separating San Diego and Tijuana, and then actually cross into Tijuana and talk with people there and see what was happening in their lives to help us gain a little deeper understanding about one piece of the immigration issues that we'll be discussing this evening. But the reason that I wanted to call everyone together for a workshop tonight was because I had gone to a rally at the state capitol, and I met the Reverend Catherine Burt from the Unitarian Church here in Lansing at that time, and she had introduced some of the people who are directly dealing with ICE in terms of facing and getting sent to a country where they don't know anybody anymore because they grew up here. They were American kids as far as I could see. They had gone to colleges that my tax dollars supported, and now that they were really smart, functional, good people, it just didn't make any sense to me that we'd want to send them to the country that we're competing against. So sending people back to China after we've educated them here for no good reason just didn't make sense to me. And I said, I want to talk to some people and figure this out. And so I met some other people from on this panel. But thank you all very much for coming this evening.
I'm Marilyn Bernard, and my involvement goes back all the way to basically 1961-62 when my family had an exchange student from Mexico City in our home. I subsequently decided I wanted to learn Spanish, became a Spanish major, lived in Mexico City with a family, not her family, but with a family, and have spent 33 years teaching Spanish and traveling to both Spain and Mexico with my students. When my husband and I retired, we wanted to be as close to Mexico as we could get, and we have a retirement home in Green Valley, Arizona. We spend 5 months of the year there, 7 months here, and we're very involved with migrants on the border.
Hello, everybody. My name is Diego Bonasanti, or Diego Bonasati, and I am with the Alliance for Immigrants' Rights and Reform. And talking about immigration is sort of, my parents were immigrants from Argentina, and they were actually accidental immigrants. My mother had a fellowship to do her medical residency, and my parents went to the consulate 6 times, and this is back in the day when there wasn't a mile-long line outside the consulate. And they couldn't figure out a way for my father to get a visa to just work. And then the guy said, you know, for Pete's sakes, why don't you just immigrate? You don't have to stay if you don't want to. And I mean, their experience, and that is 1957 when that happened. And the experience of today are huge, huge difference. But I find even deeper the issue as I've been in this, involved in legal services or in other aspects for 23 years, and I find that the thing that really drives me is family reunification and keeping families together. And I think families are the bedrock of any society, and that is the unit that is receiving the most stress as a result of these laws.
While you have the mic, continue with your first 15 minutes.
Okay.
We'll make you first since you have the mic.
Okay.
Diego, a little closer to us.
Okay.
There you
A
go.
little better. Sorry about that. So the issue is, if you look at, for example, Pastor Tom mentioned families, when families are on both sides of the border, right? When you have somebody who's grown up here and then they're separated. And less the law allows for some form of leniency. Either, a person who's grown up here strikes me I'm just taking a step back. When you look at the nomenclature, to me is important. I've always disliked the term illegitimate for a child. And one of the things that I liked in immigration law is you would see natural child, right? And I hadn't even known the term. So, out of wedlock was the kind of clumsy way to do it. But I feel like the children who've been raised here, right, who, they watch the Bears lose on Thanksgiving Day, right? I'm sorry, the Lions, I should have said. The Bears are all losing in other ways. So I'm conflating my two residences in the country. They grow up with these traditions. I can't tell you the number of kids that I've run into who were born someplace else, don't have papers, and they're waiting for their chance to serve in the military. Or they want to be a teacher. A lot of the dreams that anybody else has. But I feel that we've invested in them. And exactly as Reverend Thomas said, it's sort of like, it's a friendly harvest that we recoup them, right? We integrate them. And I feel that by letting them grow up here and then casting them aside, it goes from natural child to kind of bastard, right? Or illegitimate child. There's a way in which that treatment, to me, it doesn't feel like what this country is about. And it's also something that sends a message. Because you have a child, a country in some ways is an additional parent. If we haven't moved anywhere, you don't necessarily think about it, right? There's so much is natural, and it's in the air, and it's in the background. And that's the thing that I struggle with the most, with the rigidity of some of these laws. And what they've done is they've taken away the discretion that immigration judges and other officials have had in the past to be able to keep folks here or keep families together. And politically, we're now in the wake of the 2012 elections. We're at a curious crossroads. In terms of two parties, of the two main parties, of late, really since 2005, the Republicans have come to be associated or perceived by immigrant and Latino communities as hostile towards them. And which is interesting because if you go back to 1986, you had Ronald Reagan saying, Hispanics are natural Republicans, they just don't know it yet. Right? And he signed the Immigration Reform and Control Act, the law known as the Amnesty. And you've had, I can cite numerous examples of Republicans who've been friendly and open to immigrants, whether it's at the national level, like Ronald Reagan. George W. Bush campaigned in 2000 saying that undocumented mothers and fathers were doing what any other parent would do, and that is to ensure that they're able to support their children. And that was in the campaign. He got 35% of the vote in 2000, and in 2004 he got 44% of the vote. So he was ascending. And there's other examples. You have currently Governor Snyder is positive in the sense of what you might call high-tech immigrants who are educated, right, and who could then be part of a building industry in Michigan. In Illinois, you've had both sides of the aisle, but Jim Edgar, George Ryan were both pro-immigrant, and it wasn't a big deal. It was just kind of a natural part of things. But with the challenges that the party faced around 2005, 2006, House Republicans were looking for a way to deal with popular dissatisfaction war was going in Iraq. And this was before the surge and before the Sunni awakening. And many of them, out of the National Campaign Office, decided to attack immigrants as a defense. And they hopped onto a bandwagon that had already formed, and the association has grown since then. And there's previous examples. You go back to 1994 with Proposition 87 in California and Governor Peoples. And the shame of it is there's plenty of Republican leaders who have been very open, but at the same time not, addle-brained or anything about the immigration question. So, for example, Orrin Hatch of Utah was an original sponsor of the DREAM Act, together with Illinois Democrat Dick Durbin. John McCain was a co-sponsor with Ted Kennedy on several proposals for immigration reform. Significantly, in the 2010 primaries, these two, among many others, were pressed from the extremist or nativist part of the wing. Part of it was with the Tea Partiers, to abandon those positions. So you've seen a lot of these folks who were moderates being pushed aside or quieted, right? And I would say that the natural position of Orrin Hatch and John McCain would be one that recognizes family connection and contributions, and that many people would like to be part of the United States. And they've had to suppress that. And I think that's a shame, right? And I think at this point, the party is kind of waking up from something of a hangover in that President Obama was re-elected, and they're reading the tea leaves. And unfortunately, what saddens me is that they're not saying, this is not what we're about. We should really be supporting this. It's more about, sheesh, we'll be out of a job if we don't, we gotta draw some other people out. And it's people sometimes do things for the right reasons or for the wrong reasons, but they are looking at the issue of not alienating the Latino vote, which is increasing. And it's gone from 9% in 08 to 10% this year. And the break rate has gone more severely from 67% for Obama in 2008 to 71% in 2012. And so the positive aspect about that is that it opens up the discussion. And Speaker of the House Boehner has approached President Obama to have discussions about reforming immigration. So we are at I think this is a very appropriate time to have this panel because you're going to see a lot of this conversation happening in the coming months, probably after the fiscal cliff. But this will be one of the feature things you'll be reading about in the next year.
Outstanding. Are there any questions? Do you have any questions? Reverend Viego?
Oh, I'm not a reverend.
Any questions from the audience? We've got about 4 minutes for questions. Please. You need to speak to the mic, sir.
You seem to bring up the DREAM Act, and where does that stand now? Is it going to be brought up again?
I imagine, at this point, assume that anything from here till the new Congress is inaugurated January 4th next year, nothing else is going to move, I don't think. Now, there's a DREAM Act that's floating around somewhere. I don't think it got close to a floor vote in this session. I would imagine that would be renewed in the next session. But in addition, I think that they are going to be looking at a larger plan that would also deal with what they call future flow. That's people coming in the future and having a way to be able to moderate that, as well as legalizing the parents of dreamers. These are all going to be things discussed in the coming year.
wondering, on the state level, with the new or old people that just got voted back in, or new people, do you see a change perhaps in attitude among our state legislature and to be more supportive?
Well, I haven't caught that yet. And in part, it's because we get less information, right? It's like the federal folks get the most attention. What I do know is that there is an issue, folks have heard of Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, which is sort of like you might call it a pre-DREAM Act, or a daydream, I think they're but it was, President Obama was using existing powers of the immigration authorities to give a temporary permit to essentially folks defined in the bills, in the DREAM Act bills, essentially students, arrived as youth, and so forth. Now these folks are getting work permits and Social Security cards. And Secretary of State Ruth Johnson has determined that they're not eligible for driver's licenses. And this, I think it hangs on the twist of a phrase, but a whole class of people with these interim and transitional statuses are able to apply for driver's licenses. And essentially what they have in common is they have a work permit, they have a social, and all of these folks, by the way, have gone through more rigorous background than any of us here have. They've been fingerprinted, and their photos have gone through all the databases in the federal government. So both she and Governor Snyder have said that they're not going to issue these licenses. Last Friday, I know at least Max and you, were you also? Oh, all right. I know you were there in spirit. Okay, good. We were at the Capitol basically saying, this doesn't make any sense. These folks get work permits, but then they can't drive to work. And so there's going to be some pressure on that. And the question is, do they see themselves as insulated from what national level Republicans, especially in certain swing states, are concerned about? Or, it's not clear to me yet. Their official line is so far, no change. But I think that over time, in the coming months, I think that they're going to, whether they relent because it's common sense, because there's political pressure, or because they lose the legal argument, which I think their legal argument will be. One way or another, that's going to. I think they're going to have some realizations, whether they know it now or not.
You will have an opportunity in the next segment of the program to raise additional questions. I am hoping, Pastor Tom, that this is something that we can do once a year, and as this grows and the word gets out that we are attempting to be socially responsible, social advocates on the issues of immigration and how it affects our churches and how our churches can get involved, that we will just continue to do this until we reach the critical mass. How's that? In the meantime, Bagley Ranch, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to visiting with you again and hope you will include in your daily prayers, God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Until next time, serenity. Stay tuned for more episodes from Serenity.